Okay, welcome to 1969, and this is the year that it all happens. You have the 1968 where tensions really building up. You've got the Niagara March in Derry. You have the results of that going across the world. You've got the Crossroads speech by O'Neill, and then it all kicks off in 1969 with a group of events that lead to the British Army being called, and over 30 years of what's called the Troubles taking place after that. Alright, so how does this happen? You've got PD, the People's Democracy. They are still all for marching, and they keep on at this point to march from Belfast to Derry. Okay, and as you know, they are ambushed by a group of loyalists in a place called Burntollet Bridge, and this is broadcast, and it appears very much to be like a unionist ambush on the group. Okay, so tensions are really mounting. Okay, so new Prime Minister. Remember, O'Neill is gone. You've got James Chichester Clark, that's his cousin, replacing him. It didn't change any of the old problems, and the summer of 1969 would be the official beginning of what's become known as the Troubles. Remember, Northern Ireland in the summertime is a tinderbox of tensions. Okay, you've got lots and lots of tensions because of the marching season and reactions to that marching season as well too. So just like O'Neill, James Chichester Clark would really struggle to deal with the situation that was spiralling completely out of control and which he was powerless to stop. Okay, he'd spent a long time criticising O'Neill. Now he appeared to be in exactly the same problem. Gradually, governments in London and Dublin as well would become more and more worried and were prepared to intervene before more lives were lost. But however, by that stage it was a bit too little too late. The genie was out of the bottle. Okay, so you got Harold Wilson here in the middle, British Prime Minister, and you can see what's happening on the streets of Belfast. So the streets of the United Kingdom, this is what is actually happening. It's shocked an awful lot of people in mainland in Britain. Okay, alright, so well, what happened? So you've got riots and trouble continued after Burntollet, and they spread through Belfast, through Derry. The government deeply worried that it could not keep order, especially if the marching season happening in the summer. So really worried about what was going to happen. The British government, after decades of not even caring about what happened in Northern Ireland, they were beginning to intervene, and it actually established a cabinet committee on Northern Ireland to report on the situation that was developing there. The Dublin government as well were deeply worried too. They were concerned about the nationalist community in the north, and it sent an intelligence officer up north to try to keep an eye on the situation and keep them informed of what was happening on the ground. You also have Republican groups. They were concerned at how defenceless they were. They had little arms, little weapons, and a lot of Republican and nationalist areas were being attacked with little defence. Loyalist groups were obviously very angry that Republican groups were starting up, so they were also angry at what had been handed over to what seemed to be nationalists. Okay, so they're determined to stop this. So you have the re-emergence of the UVF groups like that, which O'Neill actually banned. So this summer of '69, this very famous song by Bryan Adams, brilliant song, for Northern Ireland it is not a good time to remember whatsoever, and it's a kind of a domino effect, lots of different dominoes that lead to the Troubles. So first of all, you have what you've looked at before. You've got Burntollet Bridge, so again that PD, that People's Democracy March, being attacked. That there was a pivotal turning point, and there was calls for summer marching season to be scaled down. However, for any unionist prime minister to actually do that would have been political suicide, so it was kept going ahead. But that meant that from January 1969 to the summer, nationalists were determined to actually show exactly what they thought. Okay, and August 1969, a very famous unionist loyalist march takes place called the Apprentice Boys. Okay, and it became a real flashpoint for people in Derry, Londonderry. Nationalists were prepared to face this parade, and they had raided the local dairy. It's a good way to remember it, the dairy and Derry. They had raided the local dairy. It's reported that they took up to 30,000, 40,000 milk bottles to be used for petrol bombs. Barricades were quickly erected across the nationalist Bogside area of the city, and the city broke into a prolonged violence with over 50 hours of rioting following this parade. What they did have in their favour was the big flats. There was big flats in the Bogside, and they actually had the higher ground, so they could actually store their petrol bombs on top of these roofs and throw it down on any policeman coming from down below. So they actually did have quite a strategic advantage. The police were absolutely exhausted trying to control this violence, and they were trying to regain control the whole way through. In the end, it took a small unit of the British Army to try to relieve the police and try to regain control in this area of the Bogside. The government and the Republic of Ireland were absolutely astounded at what was happening. They threatened to intervene, and they actually sent a field hospital to the border nearby Derry, obviously nearby the border of Donegal. So it sent a field hospital nearby. This really aggravated many Unionists who were worried that they were going to intervene some more. Okay, so Burntollet Bridge, summertime, you got Battle of the Bogside. What's going to happen next? Well, from Derry, Belfast starts to burn. It really goes across the province, and large areas of loyalist Belfast really respond to what they're saying in Derry, and they take matters into their own hands. They go around, they burn out Catholic neighbours, they burn whole streets of houses. Some of them have actually survived the Blitz in Belfast 1941, and they are torched. The most famous of these streets is Bombay Street. One of you have to remember Bombay Street in Belfast. It was completely torched. This is a picture of it up here. Up to 5%, the estimate, of Catholic families were actually displaced from their homes at this time. That was about 1,300 homes. Protestant areas were also attacked too. About 300 of their homes were also attacked, and 8 people died in this wave of sectarian violence. Riots, shootings, house burnings left Belfast looking like a war zone. This was worldwide news at the time, absolutely shocked the British government and Irish government, and required both strong action from both governments to try to bring the situation under control, because Stormont looked as if it completely lost control, and it had lost control at this point. Okay, so what happened? Well, James Citrus Clark had to call in the British Army. Okay, the British Army were called into the streets of Belfast, and remember what they're called in for. They're called in to protect the Catholic community in Belfast. So they're the homes that are being attacked, and they're actually welcomed in. They're given tea, they're given sandwiches, they're clapped into the Falls Road. This was quite a strange time. So the British Army sent in. Stormont government really clear they couldn't control the situation. British Army was sent in to police the areas, to protect Catholic areas in particular. And some loyalist areas were very angry. If it's Shankill Road, was very angry at the use of the British Army for this. And the British Army was ironically welcomed into Catholic nationalist communities. They were regarded at this stage as neutral protectors, and it was hoped that perhaps new rights would follow from this intervention as well too. Okay, so the British Army then is bringing the situation. It seems to be under control. The IRA, on the other hand, is beginning to slowly re-emerge. It had been caught completely off guard by this trouble. In the 1950s, it had been involved in what's called a border campaign, but from the start of the 60s, it had put its arms beyond use, and it had been largely inactive with little weapons and not many members. Nationalists completely criticised them for leaving their communities completely defenceless, and on the walls of Belfast, especially West Belfast, you had scrolls that said "IRA, I ran away," which is an indictment on the Republicans. However, at this time went on, support for this IRA would actually begin to change dramatically. So this time it's not well supported whatsoever. In fact, it's a bit of a laughing stock. Alright, so what's the reactions then? So the introduction of the British Army at last brought a sense of calm to Northern Ireland. However, everyone knew that this was actually just a breathing space. It was just a bit of time where they could actually get their ideas together and perhaps come up with a more permanent solution. Okay, so a more permanent solution was needed quickly before the army actually became not part of the solution, but actually part of the problem. And that's exactly what did happen, unfortunately. Stormont and the British government both tried to sort out solutions to what was actually happening at the time. Okay, so streets of Belfast looks very much like a war zone. So what did they do? Well, the British government now had the difficult task. They had to win back the trust and confidence of nationalists. Okay, so they had to try to do that in some way. They also had to reassure Unionists at the same time, so it's kind of a really tricky balancing act here. They wanted to deal with their fears of a united Ireland. Okay, and in August 1969, the British Prime Minister, remember he's the Labour Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, and Northern Ireland Prime Minister James Chichester Clark agreed to what was then called the Downing Street Declaration, and they hoped that this would at last bring some end to the troubles that had actually been happening. Okay, now unfortunately for you guys, there's two Downing Street Declarations. This is the first one, so try to connect this one with 1969 if you can. Okay, so here's Harold Wilson and there's James Chichester Clark, so it's a bit of an agreement to move forward. Okay, so what did it say? Well, for nationalists, every citizen of Northern Ireland was to be guaranteed the same equality of treatment and freedom from discrimination as the rest of the United Kingdom. Basically, these are United Kingdom rights. It's not, it shouldn't be different than any other part of the United Kingdom. Okay, so that was reaching out to nationalists. For Unionists, it agreed that Northern Ireland would remain part of the United Kingdom as long as its population wanted. This is called consent. You can use this in almost any question about Northern Ireland. Consent, okay, really important. Goes all the way up to the Good Friday Agreement. So Northern Ireland would remain part of the United Kingdom as long as the population within Northern Ireland wants. Okay, right. There's other things to this too, though. First of all, one man, one vote was to be introduced immediately. End the gerrymandering. A special committee called the Hunt Committee was set up, and it looked to reform the RUC. Okay. Scarman Tribunal was also set up to investigate the causes of these troubles in Northern Ireland and try to bring solutions. A new housing authority led to fair allocation of houses in Northern Ireland. There's meant to be fair job equality as well too, and there's meant to be investment in rough communities, dodgy communities perhaps, communities that have been underinvested in Belfast, and they were to receive like more investment grants. Okay, good. So there you can see the whole Downing Street Declaration 1969. Right, so what were reactions? Well, Unionists were not impressed with these reforms. The Hunt Commission seemed to suggest that it wanted to disarm the RUC. Unionists believed that left them defenceless. They also wanted to disband the B Specials and replace them with a part-time Ulster Defence Regiment under Army control. And the British government tried to win Unionists over with promises of not changing Northern Ireland unless the people wanted it to. Okay, it seemed that everything was being given to nationalists from their perspective. This caused riots. Ironically, the riots were in the Shankill area. Okay, nationalist reactions then. So nationalists are quite positive about the reforms. Nationalists are glad there is some progress at last. They wanted to see some political change too, and they were frustrated with the lack of progress in the past and wanted these reforms delivered on. Okay, so IRA reactions we will do then in the next section. Okay, thank you.